Good afternoon, everyone. I'm 𝗕ici𝗻𝗫𝗏, Manager of Adult Programs here at the Dallas Museum of Art. I'd like to welcome you all to our State of the Arts Conversation Series presented in partnership with KERA's Art and 𝗕liche. We're so excited to have you here today because this conversation is centered around the DMA's Rooted exhibition. Featuring art from the DMA's collection, Rooted looks at the complex relationship between people and the natural world. Rooted also features the work of Ari Brielle titled Poisoned by Zip Code, a powerful installation that addresses environmental issues in our city, specifically in the Floral Farms community, and the illegal dumping ground that came to be known as Shingle Mountain. Here today, we have C3 featured artists, Ari Brielle, environmental activist, Marsha Jackson, architect and researcher at HKS Erin Peavey, and Evelyn Mayo of Downwinders at Risk. Our moderator is Miguel Perez of KERA. Please join me in welcoming our speakers.
Hey, y'all. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Miguel. I am an arts reporter with KERA, and thank you to our partners at the Dallas Museum of Art for helping us put this fantastic panel of women together. We're here to talk about a very important issue specifically for our community, which is not always the case with these panels, but I'm grateful that we get to kind of sit in and dig into a really important issue. I want to start with Marsha, who can introduce people who may not be familiar with the story of Shingle Mountain. Marsha, do you want to tell us a little bit about Shingle Mountain? What is it, and what was it, rather, and a little bit about how it impacted your community?
Thank you, sure. Once again, I am Marsha Jackson. The Shingle Mountain started January 2018. Right next door to my home, less than 100 feet from my home, my bedroom. The Shingle Mountains grew so it was up to 180,000 tons, and we continue fighting about that. When I was introduced to 𝗕𝗫𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏𝗏, which is Evelyn and Jim came out and investigated, and it was a sight to see. That Shingle Mountain and the impact that I have continued, and as you can kind of hear, you still hear the hoarseness in my voice from that. That is a permanent fixture that I would have because of that, and so I don't want anybody else to continue going through that kind of stuff.
You and I have spoken about how long you've been in Floral Farms. I was wondering if you could talk a little bit about how the neighborhood has changed since you first moved there. And what it looked like in the 90s when you first got there, and what it looks like now.
Sure. I moved there in 1995. We moved there because of the Floor area, which the name is Floral Farms. We have nurseries there. It was there, they grew greens, and they took them to Farmers Market. Had horses there for my children, which rodeo. And the difference there was the Shingle Mountain. It changed it. It changed the whole community. It looked nothing like what we did. When I moved there, it was just like a rural area for a ranch, close to the freeway, close to my job. I retired from AT&T. So the commute was only like 15-minute drive. So, yeah, we enjoy that. The neighbors, we're all just like family. We still like family. But what we're hoping now, that is cleaned back up, and we get to see that greenery in that area again. And that's our main focus, is our community and our health also.
Evelyn, I want to turn it over to you a little bit. Can you tell us about the current state of things? The pile of roofing materials is no longer there, so what is kind of the current situation?
Sure. So all of the shingles were fully removed in February 2021. So we just had the 1-year anniversary of the mountain being gone, which is great. But there's still high levels of lead and arsenic on the property. And as part of the settlement agreement with the city of Dallas, they acquired the site for $0. So the city is the property owner of the largest tract of land where the mountain was that has this heavy lead and arsenic, and they are not committing to remediate it until a future land use is determined. Obviously, if you look behind you at the slideshow, I think there's a lot of consensus about what that future land use could be, a park. But the city hasn't committed to making that happen yet.
Ari, I want to turn it over to you, and we'll get back to that in a moment. If you have not had a chance to go over to see the installation on the first floor, Ari has a fantastic installation. Ari, can you describe it for us? Tell us, first off, what inspired you about this story to create a piece of work?
Yeah, well, I first became aware of Marsha and Shingle Mountain in 2019 through a Dallas Truth and Racial Healing event. I saw you speak, and again, it was a similar situation to this where there was a big screen in the back and you could see these images cycling through of the mountain, and that always sort of stuck in my head, and I couldn't believe that this was something that could even be possible here. And so whenever I saw that the museum wanted to accept proposals around work that dealt with the environment and how people respond to the environment, I immediately thought of Marsha and Shingle Mountain. Because I think environmental racism isn't something that is widely discussed when we talk about things like sustainability and green consciousness and all these things. And it really is brown and black people who are receiving the brunt of things like industry and dumping and stuff like that. So yeah, that's sort of what inspired the work. And so the installation is sort of multimedia. So at the center of it is a portrait of Marsha Jackson. I really wanted to be able to honor you and the work that you've done. And I think a really great way to commemorate people is through portraiture and through art. And so I wanted to have a beautiful portrait of you at the center of the work. And then a couple of other elements that kind of tie into the story. Just, you know, for people who haven't heard of Shingle Mountain, there's a few different entry points for you to be able to understand what's going on. So on either side of the painting are 2 video monitors. And so on one screen on the left side is archival footage of news clips from the 80s where there was a lead smelter in West Dallas, and it was affecting, again, brown and black communities and their health. And on the other side is more contemporary images of Marsha, her life, and her fight for her community. And so I really wanted to be able to juxtapose between the past and the present, just to speak to the fact that this is something that's still happening. It's just taking shape in a different form. And then the shingles under her is, again, just sort of to speak to the fact that this material was what was growing and growing and growing behind her home. And I don't know if you can tell, but there's a lot of shingles right there, and they sort of compress on themselves over time. And so for me, it's really interesting just to think about, it's a visual marker of what her and her community had to deal with. Just the fact that it could get to 6 stories high. And I've been dealing with these shingles now for a few months and adjusting them and seeing how they change. And so for me, it's really significant to be able to like wrap your mind around what was actually going on.
Marsha, can you kind of tell us what it was like to see yourself represented on the walls of the museum, to engage with the installation? What did you think about it?
I think it's amazing. You know, didn't think that would happen until Erin called me and she told me she wanted to paint a picture of me, and I was like, what? You know, you know me. I said, I don't take pictures. You know, but she kept pushing me and kept pushing back. Cause I said, I don't take good pictures at all. So, but she did a great job. And when you look at it, you see that even she painted right to the nails. You know, the nails were green at the time, so she did a fabulous job. But even just to tell our story. And that portrait does tell the story with the shingles up under there. And a lot of people just don't imagine. When you say shingles, what? Yes, roofing shingles really come off your home. So she really did a great job on that also.
My favorite detail from the portrait is the bright red cowboy hat that you are wearing. That was a style choice that you made entirely. That's how you showed up to the photo shoot.
Yeah.
And I think I want you to tell us a little bit about the story behind that cowboy hat. It has meaning to it, and because I think it is important to Floral Farms, to the neighborhood, and its connection to nature.
Sure. The cowboy hat, my daughter rodeo. She 𝗕𝗓𝗄, she do latest steering on decorating, so that's a good luck hat. She bought one for me. She bought one for her daughter also. So we still representing Black cowboy and cowgirls, and we want to continue doing that. The same thing in Floral Farms. That's how we started. A lot of people don't know about Black cowboys and cowgirls and want to keep the history going. In Floral Farms, that's exactly where we started, and a lot of our cowboys and cowgirls have gone on professional. My kids have gone to places I haven't been rodeoing, and that cowboy hat is that symbol. We want to keep that going.
So speaking of history and community, the mountain is no longer there, and now we have to figure out what happens next. And Erin, you have been helping draft a plan for a vision for a community park to replace that site, what was there before. Can you tell us a little bit about that process and what you heard from community members about what they wanted there?
Yeah, I mean, I just have to say how amazing it's been to work with such fabulous partners and amazing design team, a lot of which are here today. And all of us are showing up pro bono because we just are upset about this. We are dedicated to this community and feel them inside our hearts. So really, as Marsha often speaks to, this is a community that has not been listened to, that has, had their voice stifled. And so a lot of our early meeting was really about how do we help them share their voice? How do we make sure that we listen carefully and intensely to pull out what is it that matters most to them? And so we partnered and really started to develop a number of different ways in both Spanish and English so that we could capture what is the vision that they would like and what's the type of programs, so like activities, things like soccer and other things like that. And so really that's where we started. And it was very clear that what they want is what we all want, which is a place to decompress after a long day, a place to take our children so that they can play, while maybe we take a stroll and get some physical activity. I think something that we talk a lot about is how important the built environment is to our health. And I think you're seeing a very devastating example of it. But I think what we're hoping to show is a beautiful way that reclaims the floral component that they're talking about. So everything from, if you've heard of food deserts, the idea that it's hard to get, healthy, affordable, nutritious foods. So that's a component of the park. Of course, traditional parts around playgrounds and places for children to play safely. Nice walking paths that loop around. And then having the idea of being able to bring people there to gather, to celebrate, to play soccer, to have tournaments, and have it be a more regional offering to the community and a celebration of their resilience and strength. And I think in the same way that Ari talks about, wanting to represent and treasure and show all the beauty, I think this is also about that. Like, it's about trying to say, like, this community has been not listened to like so many others, and let's create something beautiful in that stead.
From a design perspective, I'm curious how you ensure that something like a park is created to connect people, right? I don't think that park necessarily means that it's going to be a social connector, right? Yeah. So what elements have to be present there for it to be truly connective?
Yeah, I mean, I think number one is going to be access, right? We need to make sure that people can access it. And I think, you know, for them, that's one of the reasons why there's multiple different points of entry. And I think the activation component. So what are the different activities that help that space to come alive and help people to be able to gather there? For Texas, you know, the ability to have shading and to comfort and things like right now we see splash pad, you know, ability to have something that draws people in and is that shared enjoyment is a real way to connect people and sort of see that we're all the same and that we're all together and that we see it in each other. And so I think that that's really important to you know, there's so many like factors like that, but those are some of them.
Marsha, what are your thoughts about replacing putting a community park where Shingle Mountain used to be, and what have your neighbors told you about that?
If no one ever seen our community, our neighbors, what we have gone through, then we're all excited. Evelyn has been there from the beginning. When we first started fighting Shingle Mountain, it was like a drawback because the community started being retaliated against. We brought that attention to Shingle Mountain. That was literally harming our community. Instead, that the city retaliated because of zoning. So the neighbors kind of pulled back, they withdrew. They didn't really want to talk. I was their representative to talk. But when Erin told us about HKS wanted to present the model, that was another way for the community to start joining together. We all start talking. Everything in that model, the park, that's from the community. They first listened to us, HKS, Vince, they listened to us. We never had that before. So by them listening to us and giving ideas, they all start talking. We all start talking again. And so we all excited that the neighbors did say, would this ever happen? Because it seemed like we're getting so much pushback now. They never said that they're really committed for this part. So that's another disappointment for us, you know, that we're all excited about this. And like Erin said, we have nowhere to go. Our community don't even have sidewalks. You know, we don't have transportation. Some of us don't even have high speed. I have high speed because I have a nonprofit, but some of them do not have high speed. And this is 2022, and the community is still going through that. This is another way that the city can help us in healing, but they're not coming forward. This is the time for them to do something. They all realized that something was wrong. It was harm. So join in and help heal our community. And that's the way to give back. But yet we have that commitment.
So that's my next question, and I'm going to turn it over to you, Evelyn. Will this happen? We have a plan for a park, but kind of walk us through why we can't just go in and build it right now.
Sure. So as Marsha said, the whole concept for the park came out of the neighborhood-led land use plan. So when Shingle Mountain first happened, we recognized this is a zoning issue. We have industrial zoning that's adjacent to homes, that's not safe. Even if Shingle Mountain were to move tomorrow, another batch plant, another rock crusher could come in by right. So at that point, we realized we have to address the fundamental issue, which is the zoning. And so the community, along with Downwinders and the Inclusive Communities Project, drafted the first ever bilingual neighborhood-led land use plan that set forth this vision to change the zoning. So along with the plan, they also filed for an authorized hearing, which is the actual process that the city can publicly rezone a whole neighborhood. However, when the neighborhood finished the plan and went to try to get it adopted by the city, they were told, oh, the path for policy for these plans has changed. There's no way forward. Obviously, that led to a lot of concern, given that this path had been used by white neighborhoods in North Dallas, and all of a sudden, when a black community tries to do it, we get the runaround. So that was concerning and led to a whole other level of organizing, but the rezoning process also has been put on pause. They've been waiting in line, 12th in line for 2 years to get their neighborhood rezoned, because there's no metric to bump them up that's based on equity. It's solely based on economic development and where there's interest by the city to rezone for some other gain. So this is a neighborhood that has done everything right, has been a model for how to organize and how to promote a vision that is clear and workable, and yet the city has thrown up roadblocks. I will say we have made progress. Since the coalition has been pushing, floral farms will be moved up the authorized hearing list, and so we are hoping to begin meeting this month to actually rezone the community and align it with the vision for future land use that the neighborhood described in their plan. So that is very technical, but a major achievement that I do want to put in there, and that is a huge testament to the neighborhood's commitment. So we're on our way to rezoning, we're on our way to getting this neighborhood plan respected and institutionalized, but the city is the private property owner of this 4-acre tract. They do not have to wait for any of those things. Council could act tomorrow to decide to remediate this to park standard and dedicate it to the park department for park use. The political will is what we're missing. And so that's why we're all here to continue supporting the neighborhood, and we ask you all to continue to support the neighborhood to get this over the mountain. You know, this is the next mountain we need to overcome, so.
Erin, I want to turn to you. I think, putting a park where Shingle Mountain once stood, there's a lot of power in that, and I was wondering if you, as an architect, can speak to the power of design, the power of something like a community park to heal collective community trauma from an environmental injustice like this.
Yeah, it's a great question, and there's so much depth in that question too. So I'm going to try and keep it as short as I can, but I think a few things. One is symbols are incredibly important to us as a society, right? Which is why we have such conversation around art and around monument and around what we build. And I think that's one of the reasons why this is so needed, is that the symbol was so painful, both symbolically and obviously physically. I mean, Marsha is just one of the community members. I think in your exhibit, you do a beautiful job showing the younger children. Well, we work with those younger children, We work with David, who was in the hospital when he was a tiny little newborn. And I think that's, upsetting on so many levels. But the built environment has this capacity in the ways that we hear, the way that the air that we smell, all of it is impacting us every single second in ways that a lot of times we're not even aware of. And so when we are able to create a place where physical activity is possible, where green trees and lush grasses help to reduce the heat island effect and help to filter the water and to clean the air, I mean, all of those things are both physically, symbolically, and mentally healing and healthy for us. I think a lot of times we get this misunderstanding that clinical care is health and well-being. Nutrition, maybe. What we don't understand is that the environments where we live shape all of that, and that they shape our mind and our bodies, which are intrinsically linked. So, thank you.
I want to throw that question to you, Ari, and reframe it through your lens. As an artist, a lot of your work, nature and greenery is a recurring motif in a lot of your paintings, and I'm curious why that is and how you see your personal relationship with those elements.
Yeah, I think I've sort of always intrinsically been interested in plants and nature and those kinds of things. But I think recently I've sort of began to understand why and how. And I think we all, especially as Black people, have a really deep connection to the land and to nature. And then my mom, my grandmas, they always had plants in the house and stuff like that. So I think I've just always seen that sort of life around, and it's always just been really interesting to me. And then as I've gotten older, I've become sort of like a plant mom myself. But I think it goes beyond just like aesthetics and, you know, decoration. It like Erin was saying, it really is healing to be able to have access to like grass and trees and clean air. And so, yeah, it's always just kind of been interwoven into the work, because I think there's also like conversations or just sort of these unspoken like norms that we don't belong in nature, and that like hiking and like, you know, swimming and all that stuff is like not for us. And so I like to kind of go against that idea too. But I think too, beginning in 2020, I started to find a lot of solace being outside because of everything going on with the pandemic and being isolated. And it was one of the only ways to be able to connect with our friends and our family was to like go to a park and eat. You know, you felt a lot safer being in open air than, you know, in a house. And so I still think that's true for myself and a lot of people today. So yeah, there's kind of a lot of things that I think about while inserting that into the work, but those are some of the things.
You definitely felt those health outcomes, right? Mm-hmm. Being outside, being the pandemic. I know I can relate to that as well. I spend a lot of time outside. Evelyn, we're talking about a specific situation, a specific community in Dallas. Can you tell us how pervasive this is across the city? This isn't the only place where this is happening, and there are other communities that are fighting situations like this. So could you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I first got involved with Shingle Mountain when I was working at Legal Aid of Northwest Texas back in 2018. And so I was working with lawyers who represented neighborhood groups fighting environmental justice and fair housing issues. And so, as Marsha said, you know, in my personal capacity, I was with Downwinders, but at work, I was with Legal Aid. And one of the first things I did was do an analysis of how did this happen? Like, what was the perfect storm that led to this outcome? And there's several. And the point of it was to understand where that storm is also brewing and where the next Shingle Mountain could be if policy changes aren't made. And so, like I said, the industrial adjacency issue, not having residential rights for all properties, even if they're in an agricultural zoning district. I mean, it's all a combination of neglect by the city code department and bad policy in the zoning code that led to this outcome. And so, yes, the analysis I did showed that at least every industrially zoned tract of land in the city that is adjacent to a home, of which 90% are a Black and brown person's home, you're gonna have a problem of one kind. And so since then, at Paul Quinn College, where I now work, we did an analysis of the cumulative impact of air pollution across the city. Where is the biggest burden of air pollution? And it's the same outcome. So you have bad enforcement, you have neighborhoods set up to fail, and you have a disproportionate pollution burden issue. These are all things that can be resolved through proactive policy. And so right now, the Neighborhood Self-Defense Project is working in West Dallas, also on a campaign to get rid of a shingle factory. Shingles have become my life. It's very strange. And so GAF, the GAF's Gotta Go campaign that's being led by Singleton Unidos, who's just like Marsha's neighborhood. The factory broke up the community, but has been the magnet that's brought it together, and now they're envisioning what the future post-GAF will look like. So it's happening everywhere, but the beautiful thing is, it's an opportunity to not just undo the racist conditions that led to these crises, but it's stopping the perpetuation of them and actually promoting a vision that reflects the community's values. Floral Farms should have had a park 20 years ago. Floral Farms always deserved everything we're talking about today, but it took being dumped on for 3 years, causing, potentially irreparable health damage. I mean, that's really something that is unforgivable to people that have been close to Marsha and close to her neighbors. So it's happening all across the city, but the Forward Dallas Comprehensive Land Use Update is an opportunity to look at this comprehensively and undo it proactively so that we're not playing defense I'm waiting for the next shingle mountain. I hope it's not shingles, maybe it's something else, but I'm just kidding. But it's gonna happen if we don't change.
What is the city's track record with follow through, right? Y'all put pressure on. Do we have enough time? You put pressure on the city to get rid of this mountain, and we're waiting for the next step, right? What now? Can you answer that question?
So follow through. The city could have removed the shingles immediately. It took them 3 years. The city said they wanted to understand how to stop the next one. We don't know what that means or what processes they're doing or what kind of investigation. There should be an investigation by the city onto how Shingle Mountain happened. That's never happened. It takes people on the outside to do that and then point the finger. So follow through. I don't know what to tell you. The city is not proactive. Everything that Downwinders does, Southern Sector Rising does, you know, every group is doing the city's job. So I have very little practical examples to give you. Sorry.
Yeah. Marsha, I want to ask you the same question from your perspective. In your experience, what is the city's track record with follow through?
I was listening to the council meeting the other day, and they gave DORD a D. So I give the city an F on their track record. Because one thing that I also tell them, that when it comes to people's health, that needs to be a priority. Nothing economic development or infrastructure should be ahead of the health of the residents. And that's something that they are really lacking. It doesn't matter whether we're suffering down there, just like Evelyn said, Singleton United. That GAL factory, I was just keep back. Because the factory is no further from where we are on the stage to the end of this building. The same thing as Joppa. I can go right at the end of my street and I can see all that dust, all that dirt. But getting still, we all hear about Shingle Mountain, JL Factory, Joppa, and it's still happening in Flora Farms. The last 2 weeks, we have been fighting 2 right in my neighborhood. We bring those to attention to the city. They say they want to change. They're still not changing. And we're still constantly fighting. So I think they need to be more education in their staffing. Their staffing don't even know anything about their zoning. We have to educate them. Evelyn and them have to go out and they have to study. We have to bring that back to the code. And then they decide, oh, it is a violation. So I think they need to go back and relook at their own staff, their own policy, and their own requirements. But yes, the city gets an F from me. Thank you.
For residents, people that might be listening right now who are learning about this for the first time, how can they get involved if they want to help? What would you tell them?
Evelyn could probably give you more information than I do. We do have a website, Southern Sector Rising, Park for Flora Farms. But also, before I continue that, as we were talking about sitting outside and enjoying the greenery, my community have children. We all been going through COVID. And so you can understand being on the inside and wearing masks. We've been having to do that for the last 3 years. So just imagine that. Our kids can't even come outside and play like children. They have to stay locked up in their room. So this is something that I hope the audience can help support us in that, because we want our family and our children to be just like anybody else. We love outside. That's the reason why we came to Flora Farms. We want to see our community the same way. The park, the beautify, because we're off of 45, and people, when they come in from south going north, the exit, sometimes that's an alternate exit. We want to see more of the greenery down there. You asked about the greenery. That's living to me when you see green. But if you do not see that green, you see that brown. And just imagine how we dying down there. So I just want them to know that. Thank you.
Evelyn, the same question to you.
Yeah, so for the Park for Floral Farms, we are actively fundraising, but we're also trying to get the political will for the city to remediate and work with us. So if you are a voting person in the city of Dallas, you have a council person, and we encourage you to speak to them about this issue. The Neighborhood Self-Defense Project is a collaborative project with Downwinders and Southern Sector Rising, and we are continuing to undo the racist zoning that is causing these problems in the first place. And like I said, Forward Dallas is the big comprehensive plan that the city is updating this year, along with their racial equity plan. So these go hand in hand. We're talking about a system that is stacked right now and has some neighborhoods zoned to fail and some to succeed. And so everyone needs to be involved in understanding what their neighborhood is zoned for, why, and what they want the future of their community to look like. And we are a resource. We're always happy to help. So if your neighborhood smells something or sees something weird, we're here for it.
𝗬𝗲𝘗𝗏, what have you gleaned from learning about this issue, creating the work that you have created? What do you walk away with?
I think first and foremost, I really have so much respect for you and your will to continue to fight this fight. It's not easy, and it is very taxing emotionally, physically, mentally. And so I think you're just a testament to, what persistence can look like. And also, it's been so great to see all the support that you have around you. I think that's a really big thing too, is because I think we can always or often feel alone, especially when, the powers that be don't care about you. It's been really great to see that there's a community of supporters and people who are fighting alongside Marsha, and not speaking over her, as people often do, but alongside her and with her. And then I've also just learned a lot about how the city functions and how we got here in the first place. All of the things that you mentioned, Evelyn, Erin, and how the city politics work. It's really upsetting, but at the same time, because of being able to know you all, I have kind of understood where you can fit in and where you can stand up and fight. So yeah, I've just learned a lot from this.
And that fight is far from over. The next question I want to present to each of you, in your opinion, and we've kind of been talking about this the whole time, but what is the top priority at the moment? Marsha, if you want to go first.
The top priority, I believe, is the remediation of that property. It has heavy lead there. And I want them to understand, everybody understand, we live in a flood zone. So where Shingle Mountain was, it's now almost like a crate there, they're filled with water. So when it rains, it's a creek. It overflows into that creek. So understand that that creek is steady contaminating the property. When that water rains, we have animals there. We have horses, sheep, and dogs. And our animals are our family also. So that's the main priority, and also zoning is next. Because if we don't have our authorized hearing for zoning, we constantly fighting batch plants and illegal business coming in our neighborhood. So those are the main two that we want to really kind of fight for, and the third, to make sure they donate their property to us for our park. Thank you.
Erin?
I would just echo a lot of the things that Marsha just said and that Evelyn said, which is, if I could only choose one thing, I think in order to make this vision a reality, we need a champion. We need the political will. And I, see a lot of beautiful people in City Hall, and I see people that want to help, but I also see a lot of things that are getting in their way. and I hope that we can find the courage to make this a reality.
I agree with everything you two just said. And something that I think of a lot is that Shingle Mountain exposed this ugly underbelly of all the things that can go wrong if all the, the perfect storm happens. And it will, and I do really think the city has a chance to learn from what they did to Floral Farms to stop the next Shingle Mountain, and they can do that through being very bold and brave with this land use plan. They could rezone the entire industrial adjacent corridor and say, no, we're just not gonna have Black and brown people disproportionately burdened by air pollution in 2022. And so I encourage, and I really am hoping that the city will take this seriously, and Shingle Mountain can become a national model for justice, so.
Ari, is there anything you want to add?
I echo everything they said. And I think too, I don't even know if it would be being brave of the city. It's just the right thing to do. So I hope that they get on that as soon as possible. Because lives are at stake,
Thank you. Thank you for those answers. I want to open it up to the audience. If anyone has questions, we have staffers, DMA staff members that are ready with mics. And if you're watching the live stream, you can also ask a question on there and it'll get up to us. I think we have one down here.
Hi, my name is 𝗦𝘁𝘁𝘁𝗲, and this is very interesting because I was learning a lot about the Deepwood dump site that was near the 𝗤𝗲𝘁𝗏 community, right? And now that's become the Trinity River Audubon Center. And so I kind of have two questions wrapped up in one. One, was Shingle Mountain like an illegal dumping site, or did the city just decide, okay, that's a place where we can dump and we will dump? And then as you're saying that things will change, this is where my mind is going. If it wasn't an illegal dump site, I kind of think that the city would just find another way to do the same thing, but not as bad. And so like, how can that be prevented? Like, obviously we all came here and we're learning about this, but I don't know, like how do we, like as citizens, prevent this from happening further?
So it was illegal. It was completely illegal, but the city didn't acknowledge that so the dumping started January 2018. Marsha called everyone that she should have. They ignored her until December 2018 when the Dallas Morning News did a piece on it. In March 2019, SSR held a press conference at City Hall. Up until that moment, the city was claiming that it was a legal business. It was during the press conference that the city flipped the script and it was now illegal and they would be filing a temporary restraining order to shut it down. So even when we knew, again, us doing the city's job, we were like, this place is illegal. We are serious. They said, no, can't be. Okay, yeah, it's illegal, so.
Any other questions?
Ms. Jackson, thank you for being here, and all the rest of you ladies for doing everything you're doing. But Ms. Jackson, for those who don't know, would you explain what your day-to-day life was like?
Sure. Coughing up black smut, for one. That's when it first started, when we heard the Shingle Mountain. Not only me, my neighbors, constantly, you hear my voice continue going. I end up, my vocal cords are inflamed, because of that. And I'm going to have that the rest of the life. Because of that, it bothered me a lot. Because when we first started Shingle Mountain, my grandkids couldn't even come visit me. The smell was horrible. Just imagine smelling burnt pavement. And that's exactly what we smelled. Even without the humidifiers, that didn't work, even in the home. So now the reason why it started all over again, just a little bit, because we're so immune, the company right next door to me was where Shingle Mountain first started. They moved their ground up pavement themselves, but when they moved it was never assessed. They only put white rocks on it. So again, they're doing business over there. And once those trucks are there, the fiberglass is airborne. So once again, it's going into our throat. And so that's the advantage we have. Everyday life, like I said before, if you come down my street, you wouldn't even know it's children in the neighborhood because they stay in the house. So coughing, going through tests constantly over and over, constantly taking about 16 different medicines because of that, because we really thought at first it was allergies, and it wasn't allergies. So it's been crazy, and I don't want to see anybody else continue going through that either. You're welcome.
We had a question down here.
Hi, Evelyn. Hi, Miss Marsha. Hi, Ari. Erin, I don't know you, but hopefully I can meet you one day. When we invited Miss Marsha to tell her story in 2019, it was because of Deepwood Dump, which was the largest illegal dump in Texas history. And those black residents fought the city for 20 years to remove that dump, which is still letting out methane gas every day. And I couldn't believe that it was happening again, and if you would have saw Miss Marsha's face, then it was not the same face she has now. She was livid, angry, frustrated. Evelyn, you said a question, you made a statement that this is gonna happen again, and I know it's gonna happen again because it just happened to Miss Marsha, right? What proactive things can folks do? And you're an organizer, you do this all the time. I have to respond to an email from you. Can folks do right now, besides, calling their council people? Because what you didn't mention is there's been a documentary about this. Council member was on there embarrassing himself and still didn't do anything about it, right? So I think, there's some other things. And I say that because Ari has been using her art to talk about these things. Architects are, pro bono, like using their work to talk about these things. Miss Marsha's now going back to school to learn, you know what I mean? Like, so there's different ways to do this work. Maybe you all can address those questions.
Yeah, I think one of the coolest things is the broad coalition that was there to move the mountain, and then the now ever-changing coalition that's forming to build the park. We've literally touched every kind of sphere, I think, professionally, that you can. And, the pictures of the mountain movers, that's what we called the people who were preparing to do civil disobedience and trespass. And we did mine shingles and dump them at, City Hall, and we did an accountability tour in front of council people's homes. That's something some person might be comfortable with, but then another person might not be, but they can do something else. So professionally or personally, if you have time, we have something for you to do. And even just in this audience, we have some of our funders, we have some of our community partners, we have, it took all of us to move the mountain, and it's gonna take all of us and more to not just build the park, but stop the next one. We can stop the next one. But to your point about Deepwood, we only really had that as our reference point. So we were thinking, wow, we've got 10 years. This could take up to 10 years. And that's why we had to up the ante so hard on the direct action. And we had to threaten civil disobedience, and we had to do things that most people don't think they should do to just live their life. So that's why we were pretty militant. But now it's about the next coalition taking this on.
Jerry, I don't know if you know that Deepwood's the same in District 8. They didn't learn then, and it's still happening in District 8. The same attorneys for Deepwood's my attorneys also. So I don't know what's it gonna take for the city of Dallas to learn. Just recently in Chicago, that the mayor did the right thing. They denied the recycling plant to come to the community. So I don't know why it's just taking our city so hard to do the right thing also. When Evelyn spoke about civil disobedience, I was telling everybody, oh man, wow, people don't even know us, and they're coming out here to support us, from all over. And that was just overjoyment to see. And I always say, oh, but I don't want anybody to be arrested because of me, you know. You know, but they were preparing for that and going through the process, even thinking about getting attorneys and stuff, until right at the last minute, they decide they want to do the right thing. It should never take the city of Dallas that long to do anything. You know, they got to get this right. And they got to start understanding people's health instead of their dollars in their pocket.
Yeah, I mean, I just second the part about whoever you are, whatever you do, wherever you live, you have a role to play. You have whatever you can give to amplify, to educate, to show up, and, you know, use the gifts that you have in whatever way you can.
Yeah, there's no like 𝗕𝗰𝘁𝗁𝘁𝗀𝗏. Like, this is us. Like, you know how to find us, and we'll get you to work.
Oh, we have a question right here.
Okay. So what is the progress of the project, and how can us fellow Texans in the Dallas-Fort Worth area help prevent any other areas from being like this?
Like I said, the status is getting it remediated. That's the #1 priority, but then getting the city to commit to using it as park space. And that's a power that the city council does have. So if you're a voting person in Dallas, we encourage you to reach out to your council person. But if you've got other skills to lend, give us all a call.
Yeah, I just wanted to say that it's great to talk about getting in touch with your city council people, but these are people who are there because folks didn't vote in the first place. Because the city council person in your district, Ms. Jackson, as you well know, should probably never have been re-voted back in. But he was. And I think that that's part of the problem, is that in Dallas, we have a very low turnout for voting. City council people are like business people. You know, they're cycled through and they're vetted by the business community, and that's why they're there. We have to start being very conscious about who we put down on that circle, because that's the biggest problem, is that we don't have people who are willing to fight for the people who live in these communities. They're upholding the business community that put them there. You know, all you have to do is examine those records of who is donating to these campaigns, and you'll understand how that works. And that the grassroots organizing that needs to take place in voting, so that we're getting people in there who actually are going to support the communities that they represent, that's the work that has to really be done.
And I'm like, can we all clap? And I would just second that primaries have just occurred, and we're on a voting cycle, so make sure that you're registered to vote and show up in November.
Do we have any other questions? We have one more right there.
Our beautiful funder from South Ontario. Oh, no? Okay, sorry. Person.
Yes, so www.parkforfloralfarms.com, and you'll see there's a donate tab, and it'll take you to another donate page. The Dallas Stars Foundation is one of our corporate partners, and so they're kind of holding the initial fundraising funds, and you can make donations there. And yes, we are actively fundraising, and so that's another way that we hope to bring all of you all in as we can.
And the Stars has generously dedicated a day, March
26th, they're having a home game that will be in honor of the Park for Floral Farms and Ms. Jackson and the Shingle Mountain fight. So if you like hockey, or if you don't, you should still go.
And I believe there are QR codes in the pamphlet that everyone has been provided. You can find more information.
Hi everyone, I'm trying to answer the questions because I hear several times everyone is trying to figure out, like, what can we do as an individual, because if you're not angry, then I don't know. What I'm trying to say is there are other ways, like you follow, you learn about the park and the effort. A lot of times, and we're trying to kind of get the political support, there are open mic at City Council, at 𝗬𝘰𝘵𝘦𝘥, which stands for Zoning Ordinance Advisory Committee. And there are open mic for citizens to speak at these different sessions where politicians have all years, city staff have all years listening to what the residents, the citizen of City of Dallas want. It could be a little bit tricky to find out the time and where and when to speak. And sometimes it may be during the workday and school hours. But if you're interested to speak up from your personal capacity or professional organization capacity, when the authorized hearing happen and they are finally have it on the list as an agenda, it's very powerful when there are multiple entities speaking on behalf of this case. And we probably can just pull out a paper and put your email there, and we can give all of you a notice when this type of things happen, and we're watching it pretty closely. So is that the good, I think that would be a good thing.
And that is the wonderful Vince Tam, who is responsible for getting me involved in many of this. So, whoop, whoop. Thanks, Vince.
And then we have one more question over here.
So my question is, what are the systems that are used to dispose of the waste in the first place? And is there a way to bolster those things? Maybe like a transportation by train, because those specific areas have a lot of train access. Is there a breakdown in that system that led to the illegal dumping in the first place?
Yeah, so there's actually another shingle mountain that was in San Antonio. Turns out this is a pretty common scam operation in Texas, at least, because with this shingle mountain, it's a quarter of a mile from the landfill. So it basically was like, no lines, cheaper dumping, come here, don't go to McComas, right? So that's how it grew so big. It got so big over the course of like 3 to 6 months. So it was a cheap, and what they were supposed to be doing is grinding them and reselling them to fill potholes and stuff. So theoretically, it's a good idea. You should recycle shingles and use them in a secondary asphalt, way. But they weren't doing it up to code, and there was no one to, crack down on them for it.
Okay, well, I just want to thank everyone for coming out here, spending your Saturday afternoon with us. I want to thank our panelists. Y'all are all doing amazing work. Thank you to the Dallas Museum of Art, our partners. Thank you to KERA and 𝗕𝗏. Like and subscribe, 𝗕𝗏, DMA Learn. And I don't think that she's here, but I do want to recognize my colleague, KERA reporter Alejandra Martinez. She has been the one that has been following the story closely for KERA. All of you know her, so I do want to thank her as well. Thank you guys so much.